I don't understand. Like, I think despite how horrible these images are, my personal opinion is that people should see what this looks
I
like,
agree.
what happens. And I'm curious if you could, because a lot of, unfortunately, like you can see some stuff on Twitter, but a lot of these images have not been made public. I'm curious if you could just describe kind of what you saw and like how this kind of experience informed the way that you view, what's going on there.
When people are denying what happened, I feel like I have to speak up and say, you
Mm-hmm.
like, it's undeniable. I've seen it with my own eyes. If you trust me as a person, if you trust me as a journalist, if you trust me as a photographer, trust me when I say I saw these things happen with my own eyes. Um, so it's been very frustrating to see a lot of people try to deny that this happened, and they wouldn't be able to deny it if Israel
Yeah.
decided to release this footage. And when I said that to the spokesperson's unit, they basically just said it's too traumatizing for Israelis. And I spoke about this because this was kind of like pretty early on in my time there. I spoke to Israelis, and across the board, every single one of them said they would never ever watch it. They'd never be able to see it. So the IDF is actually like protecting the minds of Israelis by not sharing this. Although that I think it would be extremely helpful for their case, for their cause, for their, I hate to say it like this, but for their PR as it relates to this war, because so many people don't believe that these things actually happen to Israelis, and just see Israelis as and Israel as the sole aggressors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that that's accurate, and I don't think that that's fair. And it kind of like, to your point, it kind of ladders back to a conversation that we had at ICP um, earlier this year in the fall about whether or not um, it's actually about it comes back to work that Teju Cole and Susan Sontag. I can share more of their work with you later. As a result, as it relates to this, about the suffering of others, about how comfortable people in the West in America are seeing our how comfortable we are, and how commonplace it is to see suffering and violence perpetrated against people in different parts of the world, especially those who are coming from the developing world, especially people with brown and black skin. We're used to seeing suffering for them, but we're not used to seeing white Westerners have violence perpetrated against them, or suffering on the same level. And we have to ask ourselves why we're comfortable seeing these images and these videos of violence and 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 struggle and trauma with these other populations, but not within our own. Why it's too disturbing for our own, but we're okay with it with others. And that conversation kind of got elevated to the conversation of school shootings in the States, where it's obviously like an epidemic that we have here. And one thing that we never do is share photos of school shootings. No American in the public has ever seen the photos of an aftermath of a school shooting. We've never seen a photo of a dead kid after a school shooting. We've never seen even what the classrooms look like, because it would be too disturbing for Americans. So the media just doesn't show it. But I do think that we should show it. And as terrible as it seems, as traumatizing as it would be for the people who went through it and the communities who lived it, I think it would really, on a more macro level, prevent it from happening on the level that it happens again. Images are way more powerful than descriptions and just words. And I think if Americans saw the raw images of school shootings, I think it would be impossible to not act. And we've sat on our fucking hands when it comes to, gun violence and access to guns and school shootings in the States. And I think if more Americans saw and experienced what that actually looks like, then it'd be impossible not to take more extreme measures to combat it. And I think that, and a lot of people disagree with me, to be honest, but as like a social justice activist and photographer, I do think that we should just bite the bullet and share these images. And I think as it relates to this particular conflict, I think these images and photos need to be shared, I mean, there's a risk that they're used as a there's a risk that they're used as a means to make people angry and for people to go out and cause more violence and aggression towards the others. But Israelis all know what happened because it happened to them specifically. So I don't think that that's at great of a risk. I don't think those videos are going to cause Israelis to go out and want to become more violent and want to go perpetrate more acts of violence against Palestinians. Not that they need any help to do that right now. Um, but I think it would change the narrative throughout the rest of the world, where Israel and Israelis are not seen as having been victims in this at all. And I don't really think like what happened on October 7th is actually a part of the narrative anymore. And by October 9th or 10th, it wasn't really even part of the narrative anymore. And I think it's important to understand that the suffering that Israelis and Jews and Israel went through, and to really understand that when you're saying ceasefire now, and I want a ceasefire, but when you're saying ceasefire now, and it's just directed at Israel, you also have to understand that the people who are on the other side of this ceasefire are violent terrorists.
Yeah.
And if you saw what happened on October 7th, you might try to put out a more constructive argument than just calling for a ceasefire without any actual um, ideas about how to like create an actual like lasting peace or lasting ceasefire, because you have one party who has basically agreed to never have a ceasefire. So
Yeah. Well said.
I yeah, so I think that would be important for like the overall understanding of the actual dynamics of the situation.